Hi, I'm Roy Collin, the host of the podcast. You can find everything about me by scanning the QR code there or going to roycollin.com. And you'll find my six podcasts, the Podfather, helping people become podcasters, the Awakening, exposing fraud and corruption, but with solutions, the Crypto, all things blockchain technology, meditation podcast, speaking podcast, and the Learn Polish podcast. You can also help the show by actually making a donation, visiting the store, or helping my sponsors. I hope you enjoyed this week's show. Just so that you're aware, on this episode, we've talked about chemtrails, geoengineering. There was a lot of problems with the video quality. I got kicked out at one stage, and our main guest a few times, and there's some problems with the sound. I'm using AI enhancement to improve the quality as much as possible, just to be aware. So if there's parts that the sound isn't great, just fogged a little bit, and it'll come better. So apologies for that, but the interview is so important that we decided to put it out.
Hello, everyone. Greetings. Welcome to Quantum Nurse Freedom International Livestream. And we are very honored and privileged to have our featured guest, Clifford Carnicom. And Clifford has done a lot of work, but I will let another special guest of mine he'll be my special guest host, attorney David Meiswinkle, who's been a good friend. We both live in the same state and has common interests. And so we thought it would be nice and we found out we have many things that we share in common in terms of understanding what the world is happening in this lifetime. So thank you for continuing to support us and being with us. And if there's anything that you can resonate from this podcast, please continue to share, like, and subscribe, and definitely stay with us because we will have a really interesting conversation. Our topic would have been the Unveiling the Web, Bioengineering Vaccines, and the Mystery of Morgellons, but it could go somewhere else, as if you just have to be ready because lately we've been saying and we've been hearing that truth is stranger than fiction. So I'm going to introduce first our special guest host, attorney David Meiswinkle, because through him I met Clifford. And other than meeting Clifford online, but David is doing something much more with him, and then he will explain that to you. And so David Meiswinkle is the president of the nationalarm.org. And he has been a New Jersey criminal defense attorney, but before that, he was a retired police officer. And even when he's just a retired police officer, he's always been done good work in service of the humanity, in service of the citizenship when it comes to certain activities that is really be injustice or in criminal things happening in the community. And he's done work for the Directors of Lawyers Committee for 9/11 inquiry. So why don't I pass it on to David, and David will tell more about himself, and then that will lead us to getting to know our featured guest, Clifford Carnicom. Again, thank you, everyone, and thank you. And I'm so glad that Roy Colon from Awakening podcast is here with me. And sooner or later, other of my co-hosts will come again. David, take it away.
It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to introduce Clifford Carnicom. Clifford did a movie back in 2005. I think it was called Aerial Crimes, but Cliff could correct me if that's not it. And I remember watching that movie, and the tone and the spirit was exactly as I felt at that time. And Clifford said that look at the blue skies. You might see them at a later time. In other words, they were disappearing. And I met him about 8 years ago in Tucson, Arizona. He was giving a presentation there, and we connected, and we've been connected since as friends. I've looked at a lot of his work, and I find it remarkable that a man with meager means has been able to present the nature of a crime, which most people have the faintest idea. Clifford talks about the geoengineering reference to the toxic heavy metals he's found in the chemtrails, or the aerosolized air, the spraying that's been conducted since the 1990s, and has various theories on that. Hopefully we go into some of those theories and the impact on man. But in addition, he's found a filament in the air that we breathe, which we all breathe, which is very toxic and which is very mysterious. He calls it xenobiotic. It's very hard to define, and it is part of the three area or phylums of life, the bacteria, archaea, and eukaryote. So anyway, Clifford's beginnings was that he found in his filters these toxic metals and filaments, and he sent the filament to the EPA for identification. It took a year and a half for them to get it back to him, and said they wouldn't identify it. What this filament was doing, it was invading people, and strange lesions and synthetic fibers would be growing out of people. Eventually, this became known as Morgellons disease. Right, but Clifford was looking at this back in 1999 or so. So he is the pioneer probably, and he's worked with it for 25 years now. So, and he has done some amazing things where his work in Dr. Anna Mahalcha's work, she is a board member of the National Arm, is documented in a book. I'll show you. The first 110 pages of this book, Transhumanism, is work that Clifford Carnicom and Dr. Mahalcha have done together on the effects on the blood. And then Clifford can talk to us, as we're going to be here for a little while, about how it does affect the blood. And they do a number of experiments in reference to that effect. So to introduce Clifford, I would say that he is probably doesn't think enough of himself, in a sense that he's very humble, and he's not in this for monetary reasons. He is dedicated to expose this and try to remedy the situation because he cares and loves mankind and nature. When you get into that little movie I mentioned to you, if you get to see that, made in 2005, on very little means, it resonates. It's pure, it's innocent, and it's sincere, and that's the tenor and the fiber and the essence of Clifford Carnicom. So in introducing Clifford, I'm glad he's a friend. He's a friend to mankind, and what we like to see is his work be understood. And we have, with the National Arm, which is a nonprofit, and Carnicom Institute, which is a nonprofit, have formed an agreement, and we want to form an alliance of nonprofits. Clifford has left about 24 years of work or so on his website. So it comes down to about 450 scientific papers that are all available to the public. However, the last year, he's held up on that. And that's the intellectual property now that the National Arm and the Carnicom Institute basically co-owns. And to protect that, because Clifford's concerned about his health and about getting older, and if he dies, will all this work be for naught? Will it be erased and scrubbed? Now, he has been, in a sense, persecuted. You can imagine 25 years ago, someone out there identifying things in the sky, which today people still don't understand and take for granted as a natural sky. And he's challenging and sending to the EPA and to the government. And at that same time, he's being looked at by all the major defense contractors and government agencies. All right. he's being looked at, and he would be able to capture their IP addresses and know who's looking at him. And when he published that, all of a sudden, his ability to capture the IP addresses was gone. So as they say, if you're taking flack, you're over the target. Clifford was over the target 25 years ago. 25 years ago. And they've been sprung for 25 years. And what they're spraying has heavy metals in, which is not good for your body or your being, and filaments, which, interestingly enough, will bring it up to date. The work that Clifford has done and Anna has done, Anna Mahalcha, showed that the same filaments or the same metals, heavy metals, are not only in the air we breathe in the Morgellons patients, but in the blood of those who were vaccinated with COVID-19 vaccination. So it's in the vaccinations. Dr. Ann is taking it further into the medicine. Clifford is, and both of them are in agreement. It's in the food, it's in water. So we are slowly being poisoned, the human race. And that could be put in a larger perspective of transhumanism and et cetera, as to where human race is moving. But first of all, if you're in a war and you don't know it, you're in bad shape. So we are being assaulted at all times, 24/7, and haven't the slightest idea. But people like Clifford Carnicom lighting the candle 25 years ago and maintaining the light, people would be in the dark for sure. So in introducing Clifford, I just want to say, Clifford, I'm glad you're a friend and that you care about humanity as much as you do. It's an honor to know you.
Before Clifford responds, shall we show the contract that you posted, or you have it at the National Arm?
Can you see that now? Can you see that contract?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Present, right? Oh, I don't know. Slide.
What else? Okay. Oh, add to the stage. Yeah, that's.
That's it. You see that?
Mhm.
Yeah, you can hardly read that. Maybe we should blow that up a little. Can you blow that up?
You can magnify it on your end, because you can read it there. But maybe you could read part of it.
I will read part of it. I have it in front of me in a hard copy. Here's what I'll read it. It says the intellectual property digital laboratory notes work product, which this agreement is concerned with, are an estimated 1,500 to 2,000 pages never before published from January 1st, 2024 to the present. The work product is a continuation of laboratory notes previously released and a connection to the more than 2 decades of scientific research and experimentation by the Carnicom Institute. This grouping of laboratory notes represents the most important findings of the Carnicom Institute to date, necessary to understand the intricacies of the geo-engineering and bioengineering assault on mankind. Okay, so that's basically a little bit. Let me read some more here. The grantor, that's Clifford, has documented his work, the airborne dissemination of chemicals and biological materials which are detrimental to human health. He has also isolated a unique microbe and extensively studied the filaments of a biosynthetic nature never publicly acknowledged or named by the government. For lack of a formal acknowledgement, the grantor called them cross-domain bacteria. Now, this is back some years ago. They are now publicly named Morgellons disease. In other words, when Clifford found the synthetic biology in our bodies, he tried to get the government to identify it, and they wouldn't identify it. So he was dealing with something that no one had ever classified or identified, at least publicly. Eventually, the government does identify it when people are coming to them with these things growing out of their bodies, and they call it Morgellons disease, right? That Clifford had worked extensively with the biosynthetic organism in his laboratory and has isolated various proteins and culture and grow extensive polymers, also known as hydrogels. These filament hydrogels are a plastic rubbery substance and are very injurious to human beings. The laboratory notes are the key to the isolation of various biosynthetic proteins and the secrets regarding the culture of the filaments from a petri dish into large rubber plastic hydrogels, which are made of the same substance and technology as the blood clots found in recently deceased persons after taking the COVID-19 vaccination, and furthermore consists of the same substance as those that have been studied involving Morgellons disease. This life form is not natural but biosynthetic. All right, so it gives you a sense of it. Now, what this does is it attacks the erythrocytes in the red blood cells, the erythrocytes, and that is a major conduit of oxygen in your body, and it steals the iron. So as Clifford and Dr. Anna have seen in the studies they've done together, the Fe2 plus, which is the iron in our bodies, becomes Fe3 plus, which is a rust. So you can think of people with chronic disease syndrome and all kinds of other malaise where they don't have any energy. And if you look at the blood work, you can see this Rolex formation of the blood cells. You can see almost like a field that almost looks like a bombed out, realizing we have billions of these red blood cells in our body, and realizing we're looking at just a little sample of blood under a microscope, and you can see the devastation in the red blood. So their work together, and Clifford, for the longest period of time, has confirmed that this is an attack on the immune system of the human being, and especially through the blood. All right, so I think I've talked enough there, and let for comment. But we have it, and if you go on our site, I wish we could bring it up here. Maybe I'll figure out how to work this. You can go, if you go nationalarm.org and go under legal documents, you can go scroll right down and you can blow it up nice and big and read the contract for yourself. What we're looking for is other nonprofit corporations, and this is insisted on by Clifford. There's a number of conditions there. One is that it's not there for people to speculate and make money on. It's totally dedicated to nonprofits to help human beings, mankind. It's to help mankind. That's period. So if there are nonprofits out there and want to help us develop this work, Clifford's taken it this far, but I can see, and talking to him, it can be taken further, much further. And talking to him, he said he has another dozen experiments lined up if he had the means to be able to do that. And what I would look at is as people that would be willing to put some money into this project, looking at for people willing to help him have equipment, to have the laboratory he needs, to have the assistance he needs. And I have no doubt that he would do incredible work, in addition to the incredible work he's already done, and take this research to a whole another level. If you have some support. Remember, he's sort of a lone guy out there for 25 years. People are catching up now, but not complete. And if we go into the Clifford's analysis and the 7 or 8 points, he can talk about the geoengineering from different perspectives and how that's affecting human beings and what's happening today in the world. Okay, I've said enough. Thanks.
Well, thank you, David. And I'm showing now the nationalarm.org where you could find everything that David shared, especially the contract if you wanted to hear that intellectual property. So now let's hear from Clifford and Roy. If you have any question as Clifford speaks, feel free to ask, okay? Okay, let me just, let me stop here. Go ahead, Clifford. Oops.
Thank you, Grace, and thank you, David, for hosting this and setting this up. And I do have some audio issues, so I hope that our connection is going to be okay. And Roy, pleased to meet you also, and thank you for being here. I think from what I know, we actually share some common heritage in the Polish territory of the world. But anyway, we have a big issue here, and I thank David very much for being a person that is taking the understand the depth and scope of what we're actually speaking. And
David, let me interrupt. I think Barack, I think it's obvious that you have that Wi-Fi. So yes, it would be good to now just this is the time to take up the video, and because you will be very clear. Okay, you're frozen, David. I mean, David Clifford.
I'll jump in while you're getting ready there and I can ask David a question. Like, there's different patents around the world. What should the public be aware of regarding the geoengineering?
Right there, but can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at, over in New Jersey where we live, almost every day I come home and I can tell the sky's been sprayed. And often they spray it right before a big storm. I think they do that in part so that it brings down, the rain will come in and they'll, it'll be saturated, it'll be snow all over the place. But the every time I remember as a young boy looking at the sky, we used to do that, and we used to remark about the azure blue, how beautiful it was, and the clouds, puffy clouds, and now you see these hazy things, and you can watch a whole day. You can watch it spread out over the whole sky. So over time, the sky is got a really a different look on it. Now Clifford has different areas that would be really interesting to go into because we look at it from the health perspective. Aluminum is not supposed to be in the sky, and you're not supposed to be breathing it. But anybody that's looked at that has identified the aluminum. All right, we know aluminum causes eventually Alzheimer's and dementia, probably, but a lot of other things. But you have the strontium, you have titanium, you have barium that's supposed to be in the air. And one Japanese doctor, I think he found 44 different heavy metals that were in the filament, if you can just believe that. But the strangest of all the things is the filament itself. All right, is that this weird thing, which I don't know if we can get some pictures of it. Clifford has done extensive work on it, and it's not normal to human life. It's not normal to see life on Earth. It's just synthetic biology. Now, who's behind it? That's a whole other thing. I see Clifford is there. Now, can you hear us, Clifford? I see a picture of him. All right. But here's
all the signs are, is that what we're looking?
Okay, you're vaguely coming through, Clifford. Let me just say the seven of the 8 points that in the eighth point are here that he can go into in addition to what you asked, and that's a good question, and Clifford could answer much better than I could. But his work has covered these 7 areas at least: the environmental modification and control, a broader scope than global temperature issues. Okay, military applications that we talk about, electromagnetic operations, biological operations, including bioengineering, geophysical considerations, surveillance system development, and exotic technology. And there's an 8th one that he'll have to tell us what that is. He's worked on these. He's developed papers on these. If you go to CarnicomInstitute.org, that's his website, and you can look at 25 years of history up to January of this year, where now it's intellectual property that we are sort of protecting. The significance of that property is that he has the secrets basically to grow this hydrogel. And I compare it to like Coca-Cola having a patent on their flavor of their soda or whatever. But Dr. Anna Mahacha has said publicly that he's the only person she knows that can grow this in a laboratory from a petri dish, basically. So he has wrestled with this, and I remember first meeting him, and he showed me some photos of the interior of this thing, and I got lost in it. Was so like very complex. It's like within things, within things, within things, within things of these filaments. And he has thus far isolated 4 proteins. The proteins are very important to be able to isolate them and not easy to do. So he can isolate proteins. He tells me there's probably hundreds of proteins in this thing. So we don't know what it is, but we're pretty sure it's in us. And one of the key things, which is very interesting, that him and Anna did, and their concern is because they exposed it to a low voltage current. Clifford exposed it to low voltage current. Dr. Anna did too. And it went wild. It started growing really, really fast, and just went on another stage. Just with a low voltage current. Well, their concern was if it's all in everybody, and we're all connected with the cell phones, with the Wi-Fi, with the 5G towers, with satellites, could this be a kill switch? In other words, could you put a voltage in an area where people have been saturated with this crap and just turn it to such an extent these things go crazy in their body and basically takes them out? And that could be targeted to an individual or a group, a city, state, a whole country, or the entire world. It's a theory. It's just a theory. I mean, they've done the experiment. This thing comes, it becomes even more prominent when you put a little charge on it. Clifford, can you hear us now?
I hear you, David.
Okay, good. We see you. Now, I've been talking for a while, but we really want to hear you talk. So if you can, why don't you try and comment on maybe anything that I've said, and we'll take it to the next stage.
I'll try. There definitely are connection problems here, though. But anyway, I passed on my thanks to both of you, and also my greetings to Rory. It still looks like there are connection issues wherever they're coming from. Can you still understand me, David?
Yeah. Yep.
No, I'm just being cut off.
Yeah, it looks like we're all being cut off here. This is a strange one.
We hear you, Clifford. Go ahead. I hear you anyway. I think Grace does too. In New Jersey, we hear you. I don't know, Paul might be harder. I can't hear Grace though. Grace, you're talking. You have your mute. What? There you.
Yes. As I said, Clifford, if the video is using up more and distorting it more, go ahead and just do the audio, please. Unless you couldn't hear us.
Can you hear us, Clifford? Grace said you may want to go to the audio. That way, you maybe the energy would go towards that.
So it's open. He's not muted. You see what? Okay, see, this is what's happening, and this is really an experience. You know that there's so much going on around us, and that we'll always have to be ready. So yesterday, when we were doing the test, everything was fine, but there was less activity in where he is right now. But he knows that there'll be a lot of activities. I didn't want to go through all the. So he said, Grace, tomorrow it may be. That's how much.
He's back now. Clifford, can you hear us? Almost.
So
I mean, I'm recording all week and I've not had any problems, and now I'm getting kicked out as well. So as we're waiting for Clifford, maybe Clifford can hear me. Like, I see a lot of people trying to fight this, and there's people are trying to have the battles in their own towns and cities. And I believe, like Texas, what I found weird is I saw Texas was able to ban it, and then they had clear skies. But when I done research and checked, hey, we just find out what they did. everything that I found on the internet was negative, saying, oh, conspiracy theorists and everything. It was all attacking what they'd done. And instead of us all trying to have the battle in our city,
I can tell the
who
connection
is
fine.
actually
It's
doing this? Who is the one that's turning the key, approving this to be allowed, so we can just take down the top level to prevent it being filtered around the world?
Well, that's a great question. That's the main question I ask myself too. Who's behind this? And it's mentioned in the United States, the state of Tennessee has outlawed the spraying over their state. Now, whether that's being enforced, how would they want to enforce it? That's the problem. The states don't normally have go up there and take the, interdict the airplane that's spraying it or missiles or anything like that. I mean, we're not to that point. If people realize that they're being deadly assaulted, that would be a possibility that people would talk about. Let's take these things down. Recently, of course, the United States, and it hasn't been explained yet, there's been all these drones that have been going across the United States. And, nobody to this day the public at least, has not been told why these things are even there. So, the question is that it must be pretty far up, very high, because if it's happening in Poland and all over the world, in Australia, etc., Germany, and the United States, I know it's because I take regular trips across the country. I see them in all the states, aren't in driving. That it has to be very powerful and it has to transcend national boundaries. All right, this is a global attack. When I think of globalism, I think of like the World Economic Forum. I think of those people, maybe the architects behind the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and I think of international finance, and I think it taking it up higher. I don't know where it goes, but it's incredibly evil. And the question I ask is, where are they taking us? And so this is they had a date for 2030 for a new agenda here, the new society they want to do, the fourth industrial revolution. That seems to be a magic date where the questioner of where I think what was his name? I can't think of the fellow's name. He works for Google, I think now. He did a book where human beings become basically machines. Singularity. That's what that was called. Okay, Kurzweil. Kurzweil wrote a book called The Singularity, and it talks about eventually where the machine basically merges with the human being, and you hear a Novo Harari, that's the puppet for Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, saying, "What are you talking about rights? You have no rights. You're a thing in progress in commerce. You don't have any freedom. You're not entitled to freedom. Of course, you're not entitled to dignity then." But that's the way they think of it, us. And you hear Klaus Schwab said, "You own nothing and be happy." So you might want to think, what the heck is he talking about? Owning nothing and be happy. You won't own your soul. You won't own your free will. You won't own even your thoughts. All right. So this technology, which I know that I talked to Clifford about what his interpretation is as far as the electronic grid that's being set up in our bodies, but it's it could be used as a mind control instrument also, in the sense of the 5G towers and things of that nature. It's not that hard. I mean, if they get a lock on you, looking at some of the CIA projects for mind control, that would be something that would be desirable, that they can control our very mind through all this electronic stuff that they're putting in the atmosphere and in our bodies, and it is becoming our reality, from the cell phone on, like I said, to the Wi-Fi, to the 5G towers, to satellites, etc.
It, it, Before this back again. And we welcome Drago, Bosnick of Inquiry.
Sorry for being late.
I Drago and Roy. Yeah, I obviously there are issues. My connection to the net actually seems just fine, but it's not okay to this platform for whatever reason. So I don't want to interrupt whatever the flow is here. I assume my audio is broken or gets broken up. So you have to let me know, but I don't think you have sufficient intelligibility on my side.
Now, if we hear you out, what is comment on anything you've heard, and we'll go from there.
Well, I'll try. I haven't been able to hear anything for the last 10 or 15 minutes, and some I've broken before, unfortunately. But in terms of our time, what I was trying to start to relate is that I would have 3 breakdowns of categories that are active in terms of where this discussion will go, and if I was able to speak continuously without interruption. There's 3 main topics that I would cover. One would be for the audience to have an understanding of the scope of the issue, what we're actually speaking of, and also the conflicts that are in existence with public perception of what that issue or issues are relative to what truth and investigation show that they are. Now, what that boils down to, assuming I'm not going to be able to speak freely, is that I did send that list of 7 items to you. And that email that I sent you with that list of 7 would be, let's say, a core topic here, just to set a background of what the issue actually is. And there are 7 very deep, broad issues in that list, basically covering the state and existence of this planet and all life upon it. That's what those 7 things cover. So at some point, I would hope the audience there's a word called GROK, G-R-O-K for the Heinlein folks, to truly understand what the scope of this issue is. Now, on that list, there is an 8th one. That list took well over a decade to develop. That list has held constant for the following decade. We're at the point now there will be an 8th item listed, added to that list, and that item will be that of synthetic biology. And each of those 8 things has years and years of work tied into it. So this would be a core element of an outline of this presentation that we're attempting to make. Number 1, on understanding the issue. Now, you also, along with that, you would need to immediately couple it with the conflicts that arise from public perception of what the issue is. And I will say quite clearly that there is a public perception that the origin of the issues we speak of, commonly referred to as geoengineering, are somehow centered around climate, that we're just sort of fussing around with the climate and acting in some beneficent way, but we're not really entitled to know what those good ways are that we're attempting to help ourselves out with climate control. That is a total and false premise. It has very little to do with the scope, and yet you will find, if you were to take a poll, you will find that the public perception of the origin of the topics we're speaking of will embrace that general platform of perception that, something's just going on around trying to improve climate situation for us. It's false. And you have to immediately go to those 7. And now you add on number 8. And those are the subjects that you need to begin speaking of. The second element of this discussion, should it be able to continue uninterrupted, would be the state of Carnicom Institute and its association transfer of information, methods, processes, knowledge about, in a way, at this point, the final consequence of those 7 items. And this now embraces the question of synthetic biology and the existence of not only our species, but the existence of biology in general on this planet. So this now brings up the creation of an alliance that I hope David has had an opportunity to speak of, where I'm not at the point of trying to say what my work is about. That's what the 450 papers are. That's what the 36 volumes of notes are. I'm trying to tell a message of what it is for 25 years. I don't have that luxury of that kind of time anymore. So we're at a transfer of information, knowledge, means, methods, and processes is taking place, in my eyes, for the public welfare. In my world, that's the world of nonprofits. My information will be freely transferred to nonprofits that satisfy the conditions of the intellectual contract agreement that David has hopefully presented to you. And basically it says, if you're going to use my information, you need to do it in a charitable fashion to aid and help the human race. That's the bottom line of it. Now, the third part, and everyone will decide whether or not they think that's a good idea, but I'm saying that is what I will do. My information will be released under those terms and is being released under those terms. I will go ahead and give you a hint that I think it would be rather wise to take advantage of that invitation while I'm still alive, because I suspect there will be some difficulty in terms of understanding and interpreting that information exists, as well as the fact that some of this information remains only in my head, and I would prefer to actually have it released. Now, the third level of this discussion and platform, should it continue, would be the act of solicitation. This means the invitation that is being extended to the nonprofit community at large in a global sense to become involved in this project. That is where I am at in my life, primarily right now, is to offer an invitation to those that share both comprehension. The word concern, I'm far too diplomatic in my language over the years. We're way beyond the point of concern. Concern is how I speak when I shouldn't speak. But I will say comprehension and application of the information that is now available. And what I'm offering is it's just a start, folks. When David, I didn't say a dozen experiments. I'm sorry, it's 100. I could write pages of projects that I would put in place immediately if the support levels and participation levels there. But the issue is, you're being invited. Are you going to accept the invitation? Are you going to accept the terms of the invitation? And are you going to do something? Are you actually going to do something? And this is not about me. I'll be gone. I've just tapped the surface of what's going on. It's a very important tap, but I have just tapped the surface. And yes, I have scores and scores. If you ever look at my notes, every day I'm using and writing a list of what it is I'd like to work on. Every day is a list developing of a dozen things. And that I'm talking about are projects that would involve tons of time with fully staffed, qualified individuals and resources like you couldn't imagine. The type of budgetary level we're speaking of here, you have to imagine the entire budget of the CDC, what they do with their money. You have to imagine the budget of the military complex and the Pentagon of this country and everything that they do with their money. You need to imagine the budget of the World Health Organization and all that they do with their money. And you need to think, and sorry, I use the word you, and that's not directed towards anyone personally. I hope you understand that. You is the audience of the world to me. One needs to understand that that's the level that we're speaking of here. I'm not asking for $1,000 to buy an instrument. Those days are long, 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 long gone. I am trying. I'm trying to impart an understanding of the scale of what has taken place on this planet over the last 25 years openly. Actually, if someone was willing to look, the history actually will go back a little bit further than that. And this is what I'm watching. And this is why I'm paying so much attention and spending my time with David Meiswinkel and those on the agreement, is because they've signed the agreement. David Meiswinkel is, let's say, he's doing something. In my world, he's doing something. And I completely admire and respect. I'm not going to limit to David. Some people apparently get slighted if I don't mention their name. But the fact is, what are you doing? David is there. He's taking the time. He's taking the time to understand the message, the information. That takes effort. There's very few people that would ever want to read my work. Believe me, the public side of it is our paper tries to present what I would call somewhat layman language. I even done that more so in later years. Originally, I had to always dot my I's because let's just say there is an audience that would like to criticize. That would be a mild word. Criticize the work. But David has taken and is taking the time to understand the message. There are very few people that have done that. And so what's the benefit of that? David is helping me out a whole lot when I need help. And I think it's not just me. I think we need help. And we need people that are willing to invest. What are you willing to invest in your life? What's important to you? Okay. What is important? Is your life important to you? At what point does it become important? Is your health important to you? At what time does it become important? And if you have an opportunity to do, this is your chance. And I hope someone that.
That let me interrupt then because it's many people. Let me hold on 1 second. I'll just mute you so that first. Oh, I can be unmute. I hear myself. I hear a feedback. But anyway, what many people still believe that the weather is the weather. It's natural thing. So when they see the skies, different colors, and most of them, wow, it's so beautiful. Oh, what a beautiful. So where do we begin for those people? And I'm hoping that also National Arm will have certain project with that. But where do we begin? What can you advise so that people like I'm sure David and I can continue to do the work? I'll let you respond, Clifford. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, hopefully. I am so idealistic in my life. And, you have this vision of everyone wants to know the truth. That's what I would hope. But realistically, we don't have the luxury and time available to call it. If you had a campaign where your goal was to, let's say, convince or persuade, like a debate situation, you're trying to persuade someone to a point of view. We don't have a luxury and time of trying to persuade or convince everyone on this planet that what I'm speaking of is important. I'd love to say that we did, but we don't. So realistically, our target audience has to become smaller, has to become more focused, has to be more effective. Simply don't have the time to do that. So I can't retrace my life of 30 years of trying to tell someone that what you breathe is directly affecting your entire existence. I can't spend another 30 years going back into that. What I can do is leave the record, that record's there. So we can certainly say to everyone is eligible to let's say, comprehend the record. Right? That's what I leave there. Everyone is invited. Everyone is eligible to comprehend the record. But where we are now is what I'm speaking of in terms, and I am restrictive in my target into the nonprofit world, right? I'm doing that because first of all, that's what this organization has always been, and that's what I think this world needs. I need to think we need to get the dollar out of our head as being the holy grail of our consciousness and future in life. So I restrict the audience, but we can act at the level that I'm speaking of immediately, and you still get to ask yourself, are you really going to do it? And that is at the alliance of the nonprofit. I'm not trying to convince everyone now. I am trying to raise action, participation, and effort at the level that I spoke of. And also, everything I'm speaking of is not to involve me. Other than while I'm alive, yes, it's going to involve me. But what I'm speaking of is not to involve me in the long term. It's meant to exist and be active and, in essence, try to save life of this planet. And you can get into all kinds of spiritual discussions here about the meaning of our lives. There's more to human beings than flesh and bones. There is a spirit. There is a will that rises above any and all things, material and flesh in this world. And you have to ask yourself, what is it worth fighting for? My message is not trying to reach the entire world. It is trying to say, it's too late for that, folks. I need people to join in at a global, serious level. I think of the things that get attention, and it's so fascinating to me. I mean, we're worried about the proper term is breasts and fashion shows of an inauguration these days as a headline news. This is our world of attention, okay, is a presidential inauguration. The attention of this world should be on a much higher level, at a much different place. And that is our very existence, let alone welfare. Yeah. We're custodians of this planet. We don't own the planet. Nature has taken care of everything for millennia, and it will continue to do so. It is a gift for us to be here. Hopefully I made it through, and thank you.
We were touching on Texas a while ago, and I'm just curious, has there been any success anywhere else in the world that would give people some hope? Because, everybody's seen this, we're getting sprayed left, right, and center, and they think there's no hope. I mean, Texas obviously is one answer, but have you seen somewhere else where people have done something and got good results?
In my world, you're here, and David's here, and Grace is here, and I'm here, and sorry on the spelling. I know it's D. I know it starts with the letter D. I appreciate you, Drago. This is what I see. This is what I see that's important to me. I'm not really, I'm not too much in the talk, and I'm not too much in, I guess I'll just say talk. Do I have any hope? I have infinite hope. With every moment I'm alive, I have infinite hope. And that's my job, and that's my duty in being alive. And I have that infinite hope applied to every single one of you in this presentation. And every time that I decide to go again, I've been going for scores and scores of times. I'm sort of I'm not after a public profile now, but I'm operating at a different level. I'm saying, here you go. I have infinite hope is my question. Do I see the results? Not even in a token level. Not even a token level. I question why the interruption took place soon as I started talking here. I'm not a person that likes to make something up, but I have to question that. Okay, why wouldn't this presentation be at the level of the presidential inauguration right now? We know the mainstream media it's basically garbage now, but in terms of principle, why would this presentation not be on CNN or the global news? And I don't think in terms of this country either. Can you tell me that the topics we're speaking of should not be on the top line podium of the entire globe? But they're not. But do I have hope? Yes, I have infinite hope as long as I'm alive.
Beautiful. This is one now, I'm not sure what you've seen, but I see in Wood before Christmas a fog for about a month. I'm living here for 18 years. I've never seen that. And I saw a lot of people getting sick. I have a friend in Romania, the same, a few people around. Is that something that they're doing now, the fog?
That's another whole topic. Okay. I'm not in the lab right now. Folks don't understand that my main facility for lab, it actually, let's say it was, how would you say, obstructed. It was obstructed in 2021 at a very serious level, so that I was not able to continue to work at a functional level like I had in the past. It's all a very small budget to even begin with. So I haven't been in the lab at that level for close to 3 years. About 2 years ago during the COVID, I did enter lab work again. Facilities were much less than that than I had before, but I had something and I did some work. And this last year of work involved this intellectual property was a very intense period where I did reestablish a very small lab. Now, the way I answer your question is not by what I think. Forming a hypothesis is absolutely fine. You're allowed to do that anytime. And I do that all the time. And yes, I use my instinct in that too. There's a gut there. And I follow directions, and it's coupled with science. Your question you're asking is a fascinating one to me. I will not be able to answer it literally until I get the lab running again. In this case, don't count on me, folks, getting the lab running again. I'm telling you, you need to get the lab separate from me, but my job is to point a direction at this time. But I will tell you the instinct and the intuition and the hypothesis. This is what's up. I have, hopefully you can still hear me. The whole fog, call it drone, call it whatever you want. That whole thing is a fascinating phenomena. It's subject to the same but you have this issue of a fog that Roy is speaking of. And everyone will ask, oh, what's in it? You would be amazed how many people, I've been dealing with it for 30 years, say, why don't you test it? They all keep saying, why don't you test it? But no one on any significant level, once again on CNN, will present any results of tests. In my mind, I have been thinking about it in the background as I think about a lot of things all the time. And there's a certain, what I would call logical progression that is starting to take place here. And it came up with a discussion with David as I was thinking of this. And the idea is, what is the origin of this fog? What's the nature of the fog? And you're already describing how people are getting sick and how the humidity levels don't work. None of it works in terms of meteorological principles. Humidity levels, dew point, fog, none of that's working. And you have trace material that's evident. I will say if I had the lab running, I would immediately be on it if I had another life. But I will propose a plausible hypothesis in my mind. And that is that if you would take what has been above you for the last 30 years without your consent at a little bit higher level, namely the boundary between the troposphere and the stratosphere, if you would imagine what has been above you for 25, 30 years, and that you have been breathing in because gravity does work, and you will be taking it in. And then you will also read a paper I wrote, I can't remember the year, but I'm sure it will be well over a decade ago, about the role of ELF, extremely low frequency energy, as well as a source of that type of energy, very plausibly associated with the heart facility. And you read a very interesting comment I wrote well over a decade ago, and that was that essentially that material in that upper above your head that you're not immediately seeing so obvious, if you were to lower that level using ELF, which it can be done, by the way, there's a phrase, ELF can be used to precipitate aerosols from the atmosphere. When you say precipitate, it means drop them down on people, okay? If you were to imagine a mechanism to simply lower that level that has been above you for 25 years, to ground level through specific physical mechanisms and electromagnetic mechanism, you would have a very plausible hypothesis for the appearance of the quote fog, unquote fog, and the rather correlating health symptoms and even physiological and mental effects that are being reported commonly. I don't know if that was too vague for you, Roy, because I know I speak around, but I'm saying, let's just say, I know I would be very busy immediately if I had a laboratory facility. I would say, again, a plausible hypothesis is that I would expect to find a very high degree of correlation between what is in the so-called fog, quote unquote, and what has been reported for the last 25 years in the work. Does that help at all?
No, that's great. That's great. There's one thing I want to do now, because what I want to do is I want to reach the people that don't think there's anything going on. And if we look at, like, I'm from the 70s, I was born in 72. And, when you're growing up, when you're driving, like, there was thousands of insects. You take a drive, your car was splattered. You see loads of rabbits. You see thousands of insects. I don't see that anymore. I'm even seeing lack of bees, lack of everything. And the whole ecosystem is affected. So a lot of people think this isn't affecting me, but they can see with their own eyes what is the damage this is doing to everything.
There's a tremendous capacity of human beings to deny that which is beyond their comfort zone and sphere of awareness. We have a tremendous capacity to deny, no matter what the consequences or repercussions of that are. And what you're speaking of is an expression of that denial.
It's very, very sad.
I never mean to come across as being what you would say despondent. I consider myself very much a realist. I also consider myself very much an idealist, though. And no matter how somber a picture I present, I have infinity in my mind all the time. I always ask, what is the limit? I don't ask, what is shutting me down? I ask, what is the limit of what you are capable of? And so any of these things that we speak of, that some people can take it as immediately dire and inducing fear. And these are the last things on my mind. In my life, it's about right and wrong. It wasn't that complicated in my life. My folks did a decent job. I may not have agreed with a lot of things, but they certainly agree with what they were about when it came to right and wrong. And I'm invested in the human spirit. I think it's infinite. And so I have tremendous potential and opportunity in our life, as long as we're here, and to the children. And man, you want to talk about a responsibility. Guess what? The children didn't even have a say in it, what's going on, right? We get selfish about our own lives. Just start thinking about the kids and what the heck they're being given. Sorry, I get on a diatribe here, but it's the way I am. You get me going, and it's like, what the heck is important to you? And again, the word you is never, Carol, my wife, she often points, when I say you, I say it all the time. I do not mean you personally. I speak to the entire world all the time, I suppose. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, sure.
When I mentioned about how sad it is, it's because it is so true that we have a major responsibility and that we need to act even in small ways. And so I'm glad that David stepped up, and I'm part of the nationalarm.org. So, we could all do something together. Let me just unmute you, okay? Go ahead, Clifford.
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm accused at certain times of not offering praise, apparently. And I just want to say, my message is to everyone, okay? I try not to be absorbed, and let's say unduly influenced by personal situation and my own, call it ego. I try not to. My praise goes to anyone and everyone that applies themselves, whether I agree or not with certain things, mechanics, whatever. That's not what it's about. It has nothing to do. that is a petty level of operation if we consider the selfish interests of personality needs. If that interferes with the progress that we're speaking of, that is not a constructive force. My praise goes to everyone, whether I mention them by name or not. If they apply themselves in a conscientious, honest way towards the betterment of this world. And I'm sorry if I don't pass it out at the individual level that some people want it to be said, but we're all part of the same place. What do you need?
Clifford, I have a question. Do you think more people are ready to take action now, especially in the last 3-4 years?
Well, yes. How would we say there's a line when you have nothing to lose? Things change when you have nothing to lose. When it becomes more dire, people start to change their attitudes a little bit. Yeah, the answer is yes. It doesn't excuse things in my mind, but the answer is yes. The more that we are, that's a radius. The more that we become aware of threats to our existence, the more involved and concerned we get. Question is, do you have time? David was going to say something, I think.
Can you hear me? Okay.
I sure.
What we want to do with the National Arm, Brian's our webmaster, and talked about putting a section or a page together on the website. He's making up a template now. One of the things I'd like to do is capture the geoengineering in the sense of the chemtrails throughout the world. So Roy and Drog will be able to send us a picture of those chemtrails, and the question will ask, or the template will ask for the location and the time, etc. So we can start to educate people more. Now, there's organizations that are doing that, but they're not as comprehensive, I think, as what Cliff is presenting and National Arm is presenting. This is not just geoengineering, this is bioengineering. So we have a call to action committees, which we really haven't had enough people yet to really get them going. There's about 25 major topics. If you go on our website, you can see a whole section called Call to Action, and you scroll down, and there's one on geoengineering, and you can, what I would like to do, what I will do, and with the help of Grace, with one of our directors in the National Forum, and invite Clifford, is to get this committee going on the geoengineering, bioengineering aspects. And besides raising awareness on our website, also start writing letters to Congress people and senators and things of that nature, because I think there are some good people that would be receptive to your message, Clifford, whereas maybe 25 years ago they weren't. It just seems to be right now there's a new administration coming in. There may be more receptivity there, and it's worth an effort to put into that. To me, it's a matter of creating more awareness and making this an issue. We just had a major presidential election and upheaval in the United States, I think for the good. However, there is no one talking about the issues like chemtrails or like geoengineering or bioengineering. And as you mentioned before, Clifford, that's a thing that should be right in front and center. Every politician's got a position on it. They should have the insights that you have. Grace, scroll down and see what we have there. That's it. That's the right page. If you scroll down, you'll see some of the, let's see if I can do that. No, I can't do it from my end. You can do that maybe, Grace, if you can scroll down. And then let's see what it says for its global organizations, the first one. Keep on scrolling down. And then beware, what we have here? Cure cancer. I'm not sure. It's in anyway. If you hit any of those, it opens up and it gives you a little paragraph of how to address that problem or that fact that there is a problem, right? So that's something that the National Arm can do, and we can work with nonprofits all around the world to do that. for the betterment of humanity, for their health, etc. And then get them involved in the intellectual property agreement. We do have that means, but it would maybe require, Clifford, if we promote it, the first, say, geoengineering call to action committee, and it would be a lot easier if I would say that Clifford Carnicom will be on the call. I think we'll get a better audience. There are people, and these are activists. A lot of these people are real activists. They'll take it into their, if you scroll a little bit more up, Grace, I think there's a section up there, maybe higher. You can get up now as far as climate change. Okay. Well, I think it's there somewhere. But if it's not, then it should be. I'm pretty sure it is. But what that's one of the things that I think we can do right off the bat. And I've already made preparations for that. As I said, Brian, if you look over to legal actions, Grace, if you get legal actions and put that, there might be a tab already up there, but it's not completely, geoengineering. Go down on that tab, legal actions, and no, you'd have to go back again. It didn't take. If you hit that legal actions again, just and drop it down. Go down to geoengineering. See, you got to go down a little further. It's a little tricky. There you go. See what it says. Chemtrail. Chemtrail findings. Go over there. That's a letter that we wrote to New Jersey. But there's a little template there, and I asked Brian to put in. I said we need there we go. Okay, so some people can send it to us. They can send a photograph. We'll have a link so they can upload it. And we'll ask them, if you scroll down a little bit, or the state. And we just said yesterday, I said, we need to put the country in there. And we need to have the date and time I want, so that we can coordinate this all around the world. And this little website all of a sudden might become fashionable in a lot of different places, because we're identifying the spraying. And then when we look at the spraying, I think it was remarkable what you said, Clifford, about the fog. How they may be just dropping what's above us all the time, just to us. It's astounding with electromagnetics and things of that nature, which they do have. So they have so many weapons that we're not aware of, and they're screwing around with us all the time. But this issue ties into maybe all of them. Clifford mentioned HART before. I know a little bit. We didn't go into that, but I'm sure he could give a lecture on the HART project and the impact. He's friends with Elena Freeland, and she's done some astounding books in this area too. That's what I would propose, Cliff. One of the things that the National Arm would like to do, and that we're doing it. We're going to do it. Is we're going to create that geoengineering awareness, tying in with the bioengineering awareness, and try to get people to send us photographs throughout the world, and make a network of awareness, and then take it into the legislation and the Congress and things of that nature. At least that's something we can begin with. Any comments on that?
If I could just quickly comment on, there's apps that are supposed to give you the flights that are happening around the world. Some in the UK are actually showing the planes that are doing the chemtrails, but I've tried it here and it doesn't show them. And I'm just wondering, is there apps, or is there something that that does it accurately, as opposed to the ones that have been doctored or run by the wrong people?
I don't know that, but that's something that we can learn. I'm sure that the information's out there. Clifford might know that. Clifford, what do you think?
There have been reporting systems in place, and there is a significant body of evidence that's already available. I'm not trying to substitute anything for something else. What I'm saying is we have a record that's pretty broad spread over decades of people filing their reports. Now we're saying we have some contemporary methods, and maybe now we're a little bit more savvy and understanding the significance of what it means to do something beyond just reporting it. And so the entire spectrum that David is describing is obviously a better grasp and nature of the problem. But reporting is a start, and I would say use them in complement, take advantage of that which has done before. But now, if any new systems are developed for reporting, set the goal as again, action versus reporting. What is the action that's associated with it? I wanted to pass on, if I can, if we're making our pitches, some people like task lists. They love things to do. I don't really think just in those terms because it's bigger than that, but there is an immediate task to do in terms of what I'm working on right now. And that is, the first goal I want at least a dozen nonprofits, in my mind, and at least get a dozen nonprofits on the map that are willing to say, hey, we're going to work together for the betterment of humanity. And sorry, the dollar is not our goal. Okay. We're not going to worship a dollar. We're actually going to worship people and help them. So I want that level. I want to see that level of commitment as soon as possible. And the level of commitment is fairly serious, as David knows. It's not a game. And you're going to be held accountable for wanting to participate. That's just the way it's going to be. So that is something I am openly appealing and soliciting for, along with David taking all the actions. And just look at his list, right? His laundry list is 24 issues, of which the geoengineering one has this whole branch going on. So it's a big picture that he has taken on there. My immediate goal would be to get at least a dozen nonprofits. If you have an interest, please write to me, or even preferably David, to get your name out there. And your history, the history of that organization and the work you've done will be paramount in the evaluation of the seriousness of participation and consideration. You will need to have a track record. But I would like to see that, again, in terms of seeing some boots on the ground. I'd like to see the actual steps taken.
Drago, is there anything going on in your area related to this?
Well, I mean, yeah. When it comes to Serbia, we have had a lot of these strange weather modification events, so to speak, because there's a lot of pressure in my country because it is one of the countries that strives not to be part of the mainstream, so to speak. So we've had very, very strange weather in the last several years, weather that was not really possible to explain with our climate. And I think in that regard, they're using, whoever is running the show, they're using this for geopolitical purposes as well. It's not just on a local level. So I think that's something that everyone should pay attention to, because it's very likely these things are happening in every country, or at least in most countries.
Thank you. And even the fires going on, whether it be in California or other places, there's really no such thing anymore as organic, authentic, or natural things. So when people have to really start really thinking seriously, and we've always addressed invited our audience by saying, if we don't see it in our lifetime, at least do it for the lifetime of our children. So sometimes we do efforts, and the battle seems to be so big, but as Clifford said, as long as we wake up and have breathe again, there's always that hope, and there's always that opportunity to do something. And sometimes just a matter of coming together, organizing. But I guess people have to also be careful, because our audience, Clifford, is also careful with working with a lot of nonprofits, because we know that the Soros and other global elites, oligarchy, have always used the nonprofit organizations, and we think too much and we care about many things, and it touches our heart, and then suddenly we're just being used again. So I think people have to be careful for that.
Correct. And we're attempting to incorporate that caution into the agreement itself, because there are There are corrupt nonprofit organizations operating at the highest global level we can imagine. So, like I said, track record, history, application record are all a part of the process. What have you done with your life is what it amounts to. What have you done?
Anything more, guys, that you wanted to ask? Oh, David, you're talking, you're muted.
I was just saying, I think this is very productive, Grace. Thank you for presenting, but allowing this a forum to develop. I think it'd be very interesting to reconvene, the five of us and maybe some others, some months down the line, to see what type of progress we've made, to maybe update each other on the progress and or get involved more with each other. I think it's so neat to be talking to Roy and Drago, different parts, and seeing the same thing we're seeing in the United States of America, and knowing that everyone is experiencing the same thing and has the same concerns. It sort of really bonds us and unites us. So I hope we follow this up. This is really exciting. We're going to try through the national armors to get this action committee going on the global engineering and geoengineering. It'll be interesting to see how that develops too. But again, thank you for hosting, Grace, and it was a pleasure to meet everybody. And thank you, Clifford, for all the dedication, a lifelong dedication to mankind. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much, truly. And that's not really enough just to say thank you. You're still alive, Clifford, and you would want to see some progress of the impact on others, such as us. And you really pioneered it, and suddenly, when everyone is suddenly concerned of the recent COVID vaccines and its effect, but you were too surprised. I said, "Oh, this is very similar but different." Yeah. Might it be full? If you go just a little bit, can you explain on the synthetic biology or synthetic thing that is happening, like especially when the synthetic biology has that synthetic DNA, because that's really fascinating. And if people can understand that, it's like, hello, this is massive transhumanism. You want to say about that?
I actually have some
Oh, sorry.
terms of that question. What I can hear is I understand you to be bringing up the subject of synthetic biology. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So that is, but people are always wondering, or maybe it's still, I mean, we're not trying to convince, but I think to hear that is something that is biological happening even in a synthetic environment, and it can evolve.
Yes, and this is not imaginary. It's in the literature actually. If you look at it, um, the difference here is in application and scale. Synthetic biology. Well, there are some people that claim that it's impossible to exist. I'm sorry, you can go in the standard literature, and that's the name of the game. Actually, if you look at what genetic engineering was about, it started back in the 70s. We're simply at a whole different level. So it's not really necessary for me to um, try to defend or explain the existence of synthetic biology. It's there in the literature if you look at it. We're at the point now though where pretty much anything that we want to do, think of genetics like a word processor is the best sort of a parallel I can make, analogy. Imagine you're on a word processor and what you can do. You can cut and paste, you can copy, you can move, you can insert, right? So just imagine you can do that with the genome. Imagine you can do that with the genetics of any living creature. that you can get your hands on, whether it's even on this planet or not. That capability does exist now, okay? And that's in the literature. So now, how much of an extension is it to you to consider? If you have to decide for that, is that true or not? Make your decision. If you're at the point where you say, it looks like that's true, how much of an extension is it to ask the question, well, what can be created? Can you create a new document on your word processor? Or can you only work on an existing document? Right? So the logical progression is, the question is, can you create? And the answer is yes. We're at that point, and this is what is happening. There are life forms that in essence are being created by manipulation of genetics in a way that we consider to be beyond our normal sphere of understanding, and so therefore we tend to deny them. But this is why number 8 exists on the list. It hasn't been written before, but we do get to add synthetic biology to the list. The creation of a form of life that does not satisfy the model of life that precedes it. And it has, how would I say it? This is a big one, folks, right? We're talking about the transformation of life on the planet, the capability to do that, the desire and agenda to do that, the implementation to do that, and then its eventual consequence to the human race. And I'm actually sort of sorry, because I have an issue with people thinking in terms of the human race as somehow embodying existence on this planet. You have to consider every life form that there is, because your existence is dependent upon the majority of all those life forms. So I'm not even just speaking of humans, but I know humans seem to have this self-preoccupation with their issues, right? But imagine the transformation of life on the planet, and what does that mean to you? And it's beyond a point of me raising a conjecture that this might exist. I am claiming in the work, based upon extensive direct laboratory work and investigation, that a synthetic form, synthetic meaning artificial intervention, right? The design and systems that human beings use, or intelligent life forms use, to alter, manipulate, or create a new entity. I am claiming that this evidence clearly demonstrates that a form of synthetic biology does now exist, and that it permeates our environment and our biosphere, and even more phenomenally has been doing so for 25 years. I'm very patient in terms of making my claims, let's say, assertively. I think I'm very cautious. I am making that claim in an assertive fashion at this point.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect ending. Okay. So, Clifford, people can get in touch with you at carnicominstitute.org, or you can use Substack, carnicominstitute.substack.com. And of course, get in touch with Attorney David Meiswinkle, okay? And at nationalarm.org. And thank you, Dragon. Thank you, Roy. Okay, I know it's a busy day, but we are all here. And to our audience, please share, like, please get involved, and let us continue to participate in evolving ourselves and our planet and everyone. Take care.
So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As mentioned at the start, you can find my 6 podcasts on roycollin.com, or scan the QR code if you're looking to start a podcast or do a podcasting tour. I help with that. Also, if you're looking for a virtual assistant, we also have that service. And you can help the show by visiting the store, supporting our sponsors, or making a donation. Until next week, take care.